Welcome back to the SEO Weekly, where queries are weird, advice is controversial, and everything depends. I'm Garrett Sussman, the Demand Generation Manager at iPullrank. Get ready for an episode full of attempts at comedy and sci-fi references this week. Okay, let's dive into everything you need to know in the world of SEO. Basically, John Mueller on Twitter did this really nice thread of his 14-year anniversary working at Google. He is the search advocate there. Everything that he says can easily be misinterpreted and taken as fact in terms of how you can help your ranking. So when he was asked for a comment, he said nothing, with the fear of SEOs turning all of their websites into glorified MySpace pages with sparkly GIFs. The Google Search Central blog last week said that the page experience rollout update has been fully released. It's complete now, and meanwhile, half of the internet is kind of freaking out because they have more red lights on their Lighthouse page speed insights than HAL from 2001: A Space Odyssey or the Death Star right before it blows up a planet. Speaking of the page experience rollout, Jess Peck did a Twitter takeover of SEMrush where she had a ton of really great advice when it comes to improving the performance of your website. One thing that I loved is that in addition to using Lighthouse, to actually go into your Google Chrome and using the dev tools and going to the performance tab when you're looking at how your site is doing. Check out the rest of her Twitter thread, really awesome stuff. In July, Google Search Central blog also put out a little post about Google Deals. When Barry Schwartz was asked for a comment, he said, not new, but Google Deals are an opportunity, especially with Black Friday and Cyber Monday coming up, for you and your e-commerce to get ahead and surface more visibility on Google. There's actually like a Google Deals little rich snippet that appears like when you search for Black Friday. So in this blog post that John Mueller kind of brought up again, it highlights some best practices. So for instance, creating a dedicated page for Black Friday or Cyber Monday. When you do that, to reuse the same URL that you used last year. A lot of times it's tempting to be like, 2020, Canon Icon cameras, blah, blah, blah. No, you want to use the same URL and then just update the products, the images, the sales, the offer, all of that. Keep the URL the same. Create your pages early so that Google can index them. So when you actually do update that content, make sure to submit it to Google Search Console to be recrawled. Follow your standard SEO best practices. Link to the sale page from your homepage. That's a recommendation from the blog, as well as including high quality images, which is always a great idea when it comes to e-commerce. In his recent SEO office hours, John Mueller was asked about category pages and the amount of content that should be put above the fold. He said, don't get too crazy. You want to keep it slim and lean like an Olympic runner. Well, he didn't say that, but that's what you want to do. Meanwhile, Majestic and Dixon Jones had this really great webinar about Shopify SEO, Shopify, Spotify, Botify, they all get mixed up, but Shopify SEO. He had Kevin Indig, Aaron Orndorff, and DeMonica Tracy on, and DeMonica and Kevin Shopify, DeMonica's from Speedbird Media, they recommended to really beef up those product pages. So add a lot of content, add a lot of images, add a lot of descriptions, FAQs, all that jazz. Basically, you need to treat your product pages like Audrey 2 from Little Shop of Horrors, like feed Miss Seymour. Like, just send in that content. It's really going to help you rank for Shopify SEO. Lily Ray did a really awesome deep dive on Google Discover for Deep SEO Con. Now, Google Discover is a kind of queryless search. It's native on Android. For Apple, you can get it via an iOS Google app or using Chrome on iOS. It uses your interest to serve you up articles that you'd be really interested in. So, naturally, mine has Care Bears, clothes for dogs, recipes about how to make buffalo wings, Philadelphia sports teams, ways to improve your MySpace page, stuff that I'm really interested in. But her tips were really cool. So one thing she said is it is highly unpredictable what is surfaced in Google Discover. That being said, there's enough traffic there, like a huge slice for some of her clients, that you can't ignore it. And when you optimize for Google Discover, it's not always the same sort of ranking factors that optimize for Google search. She looked at like 10,000 URLs of what was surfacing in Google Discover, and she found, things along the lines of, questions in the headlines did better, clickbaity titles without getting a manual action. I mean, you can still get a manual action for breaking the terms and conditions of Google Discover. So anything like pornographic or illegal, you don't want to have up there. That said, click-through rates were really high for actual clickbaity titles. So you do need to watch out for that with manual actions. Highly emotional and deeply personal related to your interests. So you really want to get into the nitty-gritty of those specific types of topics, and that's more likely to be surfaced in Google Discover. Surveys. Search Engine Journal did the State of SEO 2021 survey. They actually surveyed 2,800 SEO professionals. Now remember, these are just opinions. It's kind of risky. I mean, when you survey a ton of SEO professionals like that, it's kind of like asking your friends where they want to go to a restaurant, and you only have the options that are provided by the survey, but you always have that one friend who's like, yeah, let's get fried chicken at the gas station. Who does that? No. Anyway, it was interesting to see. They asked what do you think are the current highest ranking factors, and the number one was on page, so meta titles, descriptions, H1s. After that, you had like organic user behavior, depth and accuracy for content. Then they were asked, what do you think are the most emergent like tech factors? What are those like new trends that SEO should be paying attention to? And 36% naturally said core web vitals. That has been an obsession for the last 6 months, where Google's warning like you have to get your page speed performance up. So it makes sense that people think that that's really important. And meanwhile, anyone who's using Elementor or has a Wix website is pretty much freaking out right now. No, they're not that bad. They're not that bad. Well, no learner thinks Elementor is bad, but I use it. Anyway, and then what will you be working on going forward? User experience, content production were top results, on-page factors. And so can we actually cut to Morty Oberstein currently working on his website? Okay. Yep, that's what I thought. Meanwhile, in the local SEO space, Bright Local published their annual Business Listings Trust Report 2021. Always really interesting when it comes to what's going on in the local space, how consumers are interacting with local pages, whether that's like Google or Facebook or Yelp. They actually asked, where do consumers most commonly go for local business information? 89% said Google, 32% said Yelp. Yelp actually sued the other 68% of users who did not visit their site. So there was a really cool article from Olga Zarzeczna, who SEOsly.com, really cool. It was 15 examples of technical SEO issues and how to fix them. Really in-depth details, common issues that you see, but it's a little more on the technical side, and I found it to be super helpful. She was covering topics like not passing core web vitals in terms of your field data or your lab data. Do you have messed up canonicals that are malformed? How do you fix that? Internal links to redirected URLs, which is problematic for technical SEO. She has all of these specific tips on how to dig into it. Her articles are great. I'm actually kind of waiting for Olga to start delivering TikTok videos. I'm sure they'll be fantastic. So Olga, TikTok, I'll subscribe to your channel. Will Critchlow, Search Pilot, had a couple of really interesting Twitter threads related to A/B testing and internal linking. Basically, he went into like the advanced topic of internal linking and how it's kind of commonly known, and he's done a lot of tests on this, about how internal links positively impact your rankings. That said, he says it can get complex just in the fact of, it could, when you start to distribute the link equity across multiple pages on your website, you have to be careful of where you're distributing it, and you don't want to negatively impact your link equity distribution. That said, he says it's worth experimenting on your own site with A/B tests. They found that generally internal linking is positive, and one interesting thing he noticed as well is that you see a positive impact for both the page that's linking out and the page that's being targeted. So check out the rest of his Twitter thread. Lots of great insights and tests done at Search Pilot. Lazarina Stoy created a step-by-step tutorial on how to automatically generate meta descriptions using Python and BERT. Really cool, really helpful for if you have like a massive scale website with a ton of pages that either all have duplicate meta descriptions or no meta descriptions and you need valuable actual related content. She showed you how you can kind of do that programmatically. That being said, you just know that like Skynet, the robots that are going to take over the world, is going to be created by like an SEO who's messing with like Python and machine learning. Like that's just naturally going to happen. That's going to be the downfall of humanity, right? SEO is playing with machine learning, maybe. I don't know. And she also used a screaming frog in the process. Anyone saw the Matrix trailer this week? Just a throwback to last week's episode on title tags, but you know that if Google created the Matrix, like I'd be in there like trying to create my own title tag, my own version of myself, and I'd want to look like Keanu Reeves, but then Google would be like, no, you're going to be Jason Schwartzman. Thanks, Google Matrix. So Sitebulb is actually doing this really cool initiative where they're doing a climate positive SEO auditing in which they're trying to, create an environmentally sustainable SEO with their SaaS tool. They're reducing the carbon footprint of their company, which I think is awesome. They're also planting trees for every new free trial and every new newsletter sign-up subscriber that they get. So it's a really cool initiative. I think it's worth supporting. They've planted 6,582 trees so far. I'm actually personally convinced that they're building a forest for Jamie Indigo and her army of render elves. So I think that's pretty cool. And they're actually hosting a really cool webinar. Jeff is doing a Q&A with Cindy Crum and our very own Colt Sleva. Next week, it's Wednesday, September 15th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, and it's going to be about mobile desktop parity and SEO. Really interesting topic, just the way that you should have the same content on your mobile site as well as on your desktop for when mobile-only indexing finally rolls out. And finally, a shout out to Alita Solis and her ever-iterating Learning SEO website. She just does so much for the community. If you get a chance, go to that. It covers everything from beginner, technical, local, podcasts, YouTube SEO, anything you can need. She actually builds out a roadmap on how to use the website, and she's been iterating. I think it's on version 15. So cool. So check out that website. All of the links of every story and resource that I mentioned is in the comments. Please subscribe, like, give me a comment, give me a shout out. Let me know what you want me to cover in the future. Let me know if my comedy didn't land, or tell me if you think the world is going to be taken over by robots due to SEOs playing with machine learning. My name is Garrett Sussman from iPullrank, and I am going to check out what's going on in my Discover feed.